Welcome. Hello. Today I want to share tips for traveling with an insulin pump. This is specifically about my experience with traveling with the Medtronic Minimed 780G insulin pump, although a lot of these tips apply to a lot of different insulin pump models. I hope you learned something here. If you are using an insulin pump or thinking about using an insulin pump, there are new things to think about when traveling. And so today we will cover some of the important topics because the most important thing is staying safe on your journey. You don't want anything to go wrong. Probably you're taking this vacation because you want to relax or have a good time. So let's share some information here about what you can do to really set yourself up for success when flying on a plane with an insulin pump and also at your destination. So packing for the trip, first of all, we'll cover that, and then some tips about airport security and TSA and the impact of air pressure changes while flying, which is something that I don't think people know about enough. So I definitely want to discuss that. So there's a lot of information online about packing for your trip when you have an insulin pump. Generally, the advice is to pack at least twice, if not 3 times the number of supplies you need, because some of the things you need for your insulin pump, like the CGM sensors, the insulin reservoir, you can't just get at the pharmacy. So definitely have extra with you. And then also you want to make sure you have treatments for low blood sugar, like glucose gummies or fruit gummies or juice box, something like that. And I have a whole list of things, a list of what I pack, which I will share in the description of the video as well. Make sure you also bring plenty of glucose test strips and a glucose meter, because even if you don't test your blood very often with a glucose tester because you're using a CGM, you want to make sure you have enough test strips in case your CGM stops working. So don't underpack those supplies. Make sure you have plenty of those. So here's a picture of what I usually pack, and I will share the list in the description. Definitely pack insulin, much more insulin than you think you'll need. There's lots of different ways you can pack it. I usually go with this pretty simple method, which is a insulated case that has an ice pack, and then as long as the ice pack is frozen before going to the airport, there's no problem with bringing that through airport security. This is a very low cost solution. There's more expensive options out there, but this works great. It usually keeps my insulin cold until I get to my destination. So definitely ice pack is a good idea because you don't want your insulin to be too hot, because then it will destroy the insulin. Insulin syringes. Very important. If you have an insulin pump and it stops working, you can use an insulin syringe to take the insulin out of the pump, the reservoir of the pump, and inject insulin. So you need insulin continuously. If you have to go without insulin for like 4 hours, or that's a long enough time period to actually make you sick. So you want to have a solution on hand. And so a syringe is a really good solution here. You can also carry insulin pens as a backup source of insulin as well. But be prepared just in case something happens with your pump. It probably won't happen because pumps are very reliable, but you do need a backup method because it's so critical to your life that you have insulin all the time. You cannot go without insulin even for a few hours. Bring some extra tape, adhesives. Often people go on vacation to places that are warmer, and if you're in a warmer place, you sweat more and the tape might come loose. I like this Hypafix tape, but there's so many options. Over tape that goes over top of the sensor so your sensor doesn't fall off. So extra adhesives, even if you don't usually need it where you're currently at. If you are in a hot, humid climate, you might find that you actually do need extra tape and adhesives to keep the sensor on for the full time. Okay, at the airport, I know for me, one of the most stressful things is going through security, because the sensor and the pump cannot be exposed to X-ray, and the 3D body scanners are X-ray. So if you are in line and there's a 3D body scanner, you can tell the TSA agents that you opt out. And if you say opt out, you can wait before you go through the 3D body scanner, and then somebody will come and give you an alternative screening, usually a pat down. And if you plan ahead of time, you can get TSA pre-check, which avoids the situation, because if you get TSA pre-check, I believe usually you just go through a magnetic metal detector, so not an X-ray machine. But I've opted out every single time I've flown since getting insulin pump. Usually I have to wait like 15 minutes. So definitely, I mean, before I get somebody to come over and give me a pat down. So definitely allow extra time, get to the airport early, and be very patient. But I've had really good experiences with TSA. I think one time somebody tried to tell me, oh, it's okay if you go through, but that was a one-off occasion. Most of the TSA agents are actually very knowledgeable about people with insulin pumps and diabetes, and there's usually a sign that says if you have a medical device, you might need to opt out. So opt out is what you say, and you can wait there, and then somebody will come and give you an alternate screening. So definitely a little bit stressful, but in my opinion, it's not worth risking any damage to the pump or the CGM when I'm about to go on vacation. Not only is it very expensive if something goes wrong, but also like my life could be in danger if it stops working and I'm on the plane, right? So you want to make sure that there is no possibility of causing any damage to your sensors or your insulin pump. So opt out or get the pre-check pass beforehand. And if you sign up for pre-check, make sure you do that well in advance because that process can take some time. Okay, so now you're at the airport. Getting through airport security is probably like, when you get through that, you're probably relieved. That was pretty stressful. Take some time to yourself. I usually eat breakfast if it's in the morning. I try to find something that is low in carbohydrates to eat at the airport, which can be kind of challenging, but I don't want to cause my blood sugar to go really high, and it's easier to manage my blood sugar if I have lower carbohydrates. I'm probably already stressed a bit from flying. I found that this one place had a quiche, which was a very thin crust, so it had low carbohydrates, and then some unsweetened iced tea or some coffee with no sugar in it. But find something or bring something with that is a snack that you can eat. And I made the mistake one time of having a drink that had quite a bit of sugar in it, and then before getting on the plane, my blood sugar is going up high, and I hadn't dosed enough insulin for it. So planning ahead and trying to have low carbohydrate options just makes your life a little bit easier. In my opinion, it's easier to manage your blood sugar if you don't have a lot of high carbohydrates when you're trying to also juggle travel as well. Okay, so now you're on the plane and you're going to be taking off soon. Now, this is the interesting thing is that when the plane, when it ascends, inside the cabin, the air pressure decreases. And that pressure change can actually cause a little bit of insulin to leave your insulin pump unintended. And this can be a problem if you're very sensitive to insulin. I want to talk about what I do. Medtronic says you should talk to your doctor about this, and I absolutely agree. But this is what I do. So for some background here, there's a study called Changes in Altitude Cause Unintended Insulin Delivery from Insulin Pumps. In this study, it said that as airplanes ascend, ambient pressure decreases and air comes out of the solution forming bubbles, and the bubbles displace the insulin in the pump, causing excess delivery. The larger the volume of insulin, the more bubbles will form, displacing insulin. So I wondered if this was true. One time when I flew, the first time I flew, I unhooked my insulin. I suspended my insulin pump and I unhooked it, and I could see that a little bit of insulin did come out. So I can confirm that did happen for me. I'm not sure if it happens every time. There's a lot of variables. And then not too long ago, Medtronic came out with this urgent medical device correction, which says the same thing that study said, that pump delivery volume accuracy during changes in air pressure. So it's not the amount of insulin you get is not as accurate because of the changes in air pressure as the plane ascends. And you might wonder, well, what's the difference when the cabin is pressurized but at cruising altitude, it's about the equivalent pressure of being on a mountaintop. So what happens, this is the insulin reservoir. So there's little bubbles in there. I mean, when you put insulin in a reservoir, you try to get all the bubbles out of the insulin, but there's always probably a little tiny small ones, and apparently pressure changes can cause more air bubbles as well. And so this is a problem. And I've seen many stories online where people said, oh, every time I travel, I go low every time. And I need to get orange juice from the, the stewardess on the plane, like the flight attendant. It's a big problem. People, you really don't want your blood sugar to go low while you're up in the airplane. I mean, sure, you can correct it, but it causes a lot of anxiety. And what if your sensor stops working? So to avoid this entirely, I unhook my insulin pump, or I suspend my insulin pump, and I physically unhook it from myself until the plane gets at cruising altitude. So when I'm sitting there on the tarmac, I unhook it, and then once the pilot says we're at cruising altitude, then I reconnect. That's what I do. Definitely talk with your healthcare team and what they recommend. So that prevents this unattended insulin delivery. And for someone very sensitive to insulin, even if it's only a half unit, that can be enough to cause low blood sugar. So that is really important tip. And anyway, those are the big things for traveling. If you're interested in learning more about insulin pumps, check out my website, insulinpumplife.com. I've got a free ebook you can download about my personal experience with insulin pumps, and hope you can get your free copy and let me know what you think. Okay, and then just a few more things at the airport. At the terminal itself, you may want to calibrate your insulin pump before you go to the airport. On my previous insulin pump model, there was one time at the airport where there was enough electronic interference that my CGM was not talking to my pump correctly. Recently, that hasn't been a problem. But one thing you can do before you go to the airport is to calibrate your pump. You can also put a new battery in your pump. Just so you can avoid the possibility of having to replace the battery later. I mean, the batteries last several weeks for me, so it's just something easy to do. I'm trying to reduce the number of things I have to do during the vacation because I just want to have a great vacation. So yeah, make sure you bring batteries with. I use on my day-to-day, usually I use a rechargeable nickel metal hydride battery, but when I travel, I also bring an alkaline battery with as well. These are just AA batteries, so you can probably get one easily from any place. And then one other thing that's worth mentioning is if you're going swimming and you're on your vacation and you're going to hop in the pool or in the ocean, you may want to take off the insulin pump and not expose it to the water, even though the insulin pump is supposed to tolerate water fine. There are so many stories where people jump in the pool when they're on vacation and then the pump stops working because if there's even a tiny little crack, it makes it not waterproof, and so sometimes a pump gets a crack and you don't realize it, and then the water damages the pump and makes it stop working. So just to avoid that issue, and you also don't want the pump to be exposed to a high, like direct sunlight, sitting in the sun when it's really hot. So you want to make sure that if you disconnect it, you want to make sure it's in the shade as well. So that's everything I've got today. If you thought this was great information, if you're looking for more information about insulin pumps, check out my other videos here on YouTube, and links in the description for a lot of the things I talked about today. Thank you.